Welcome back. Today we're going to be trying to make a Damascus pattern with my name in it. And the reason for it is over the last several months we've been exploring barrel tube making techniques through the ages, starting with the early 1700s and progressing to the helically wrapped and forge welded Damascus barrels of the 1800s that I've dreamt of recreating for a long time. We've learnt a lot, but our final attempt had a crack right in the middle, and I'm not happy to call it quits. And so I want to try and shoot for the moon and do something incredibly special and incredibly challenging in putting my name in a helically wrapped and welded Damascus barrel, just like those famous barrel examples that have been so inspiring to me. And for that, we need the Damascus that's got my name in it. But how on earth are we going to do it? Important to remember, in order for a Damascus pattern to be visible, you need to have two different alloys of material. In our case, it's going to be wrought iron and 1040. Option 1 is to explore the pixel methodology. Now, keen viewers of the channel will remember a year ago I made QR code Damascus, and this was done by cutting a ton of 3mm or 1/8" bits of steel and assembling them into a QR code. The same principle could be applied to making letters. By using one alloy for the E, one alloy for the border and the negative space, we'd be able to make text. Now, you'll also remember that in April of this year, I explored option 2, and that is cut out Damascus. Two alloys, one of them is the negative, one of them is the positive. We put the positive inside the negative, and that is exactly how we made our phallic Damascus that we turned into a Damascus dagger. All those parts were cut on my Wazer water jet, and it worked out quite fine. Option 3 is the 3D print method. In July of this year, I made a Damascus pattern of my dog Crazy. We 3D printed this thin-walled PLA form, and then we poured different alloys of powder in the negative and the positive of the final image. The final result was pretty awesome and would be totally viable to do some awesome fonts. Option 4 is the block assembly process. Now, Steve Culver, the master bladesmith who also got fascinated by the story of Damascus barrels and even made a functioning one himself, did some incredible research on the topic of text in Damascus, and this is one of the methods he assumes would have been historically used. And so I've got to decide what on earth is going to be the option that we use. Now, I do think that there's potentially historical validity for the pixel technique because of this 1976 article I found by John Puray that has an illustration of some of the methods they use to create their Damascus barrel patterns. They often use rolled out square bars to form their patterns, so I think it would have been quite natural for them to use those techniques to make their letters. The benefits of this? It's quite easy to achieve. The cons of it, we need to make a ton of square bar. The problem with the cutout technique is I need to be able to use historical wrought iron in this because of its ease of forge welding. And wrought iron is anisotropic. It has a grain to it. So I can't just forge it out into a sheet and cut it out and stack a load of sheets together because the grain's going to be all wrong and it's going to probably rip apart. We've got a similar problem with the 3D printed Damascus, but we are one step closer. You see, I have access to pure iron powder, which wouldn't have grain to it, but would be very close to the chemical composition of wrought iron. Now, our block assembly would allow us to use the materials we desire, but there is a lot of different individual sizes of bar to make the individual letters. Given these considerations, I think the simplest and most reliable method of achieving a letter would be with our pixel technique. But would it actually look good? And how many pixels would we need to be able to make our letters? Allowing a border, that is 5 by 7 pixels. So that's 35 squares. Try all the letters, shall we? We can definitely do an E in that same space. What if I want to do my first name? Maybe just pull off an A? A C's a no-brainer. If I was just doing my last name, I would only need 4 individual letters and just a bigger bar of the E's. 7 total letters with the whole shebang. For my last name, it's 140 squares. For my full name, it's 245. Okay, it's me here, back from the future. I just put a shift in under the power hammer. And even though it's 1st of December, I've been absolutely dripping in sweat today. While I've been putting in a shift forging, so has my underwear been put in a shift, keeping me oh so cool, thanks to the phenomenal micromodal fabric that MeUndies is made out of. I love their underwear so much that I spend my own money on it, because it's nothing but the best for my crown jewels. Another 3 pairs arrived.
By the way, your wife told me to tell you to stop buying MeUndies because you've got too many of them. You've got too many to wash.
Yeah, it's becoming an addiction. They're just so good. And you need all of the different colors imaginable in your wardrobe. What if you're feeling a little bit festive? Well, they've got festive designs you can choose from. What if you're feeling a little bit bright colored? You can pick bright colored designs. What if you want long underwear? What if you want short underwear like boxer briefs? You gotta have them all, and acquiring them all has been my project for the last year. They're just so comfortable. Not only do they have great underwear for men, they got great underwear for women and a range of loungewear for all of us. So knock out all your holiday gifting needs today at meundies.com/forge, where you're gonna get exclusive holiday deals up to 50% off. Be sure to use code FORGE at checkout. That's meundies.com/forge. Let's get back to designing this pattern. So with the proof of concept in chalk, took to Illustrator and drew up these 5x7 grids. This is how it would be all assembled, but an individual bar would just look like that. So we'll make the end blocks out of solid. They won't need to be little squares. So for the 10 letters, we need 350 squares. In preparation, I bought some more of this historic Norwich Castle wrought iron. We're gonna need to forge this into our 1/2-inch square bars. But a couple of months ago, wishful thinking, exactly for this project, motivated me to buy this 1/2-inch square EN8. Now I've got to figure out how much of this bloody letter material we actually need, because the letter components are not the only components that go into the barrel material. In Greener's book, famous book here, here we go. About 45 pounds of nails were required to make a barrel of 6 pounds. That means we're gonna lose 86.7% of the material that we start with to wastage. So now we need to figure out what percentage of the final pattern is going to be text to determine how many pounds, how much weight of text we're going to need. And this again is where Steve Culver comes in, because his research on text in Damascus barrels has included some incredible simulations using the Thor 2 software, and shows me the rough proportions that I think that we should be working to when we're trying to put text in a pattern. We can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2 out of 5, 40%. It's 40% of the billet. 40% of 45 means we need 18 pounds of text. That is 8.16 kilos of text. Technically, this should all include wastage, but we're gonna add a little bit of a safety margin there anyway. What should have been very simple maths turned into a very embarrassing number of hours creating a spreadsheet that determined the ratio of light pixels to dark pixels, and therefore how much of each bar we'd need to draw out. We then used those figures to get a total based on the frequency with which each letter actually appears in my whole name. But the thing is, with a letter that only repeats once, like the letter A, the total volume required would mean that it only needs to be 22 millimeters long, and these proportions are not suitable for actually forging it down into a long, thinner bar. And so, knowing that the letter E repeats 4 times, it uses about 90 millimeters of material, I decided, why don't we just calculate how would it go if we just made every single letter billet 100 millimeters long? And the result is, we need 5.4 meters of our 1040 square bar, and I'd need to draw this out into 15.6 meters of 1/2-inch square wrought iron. That's more than twice as long as that entire steel rack. Now, of course, that's quite ridiculous, so it'd be nice to make life more efficient. And so, we determined that there are a number of repeating shapes in our letters. If we forge out a bunch of these blocks that we've highlighted, that will fill a ton of the gaps that we need to fill, and mean that there'll be less individual forge welds, because with every forge weld we have that much of a chance for there to be something that goes wrong. And so we're going to be going for a hybrid pixel block assembly method. To fill in the gaps, I'm gonna need to make like 55 blocks of different sizes of wrought iron, only about a meter of 1/2-inch square wrought iron, and we'll have to cut 56 pieces of this 1040. Step 1 is gonna be refining this wrought iron with a couple of extra forge welds, drawing it down into some 1/2-inch flat bar for those blocks, some 1/2-inch square bar for a 1/2-inch square, and so this is gonna be a pretty industrial afternoon. How much of this bar do you think we're gonna need, Jamie?
That much.
This much?
Yeah, that'll do.
Yeah, no. How about that much? We need all of this material just for about 30% of the whole billet. I'm gonna need to get more wrought iron. Gotta etch it to make sure the grain is right. Ah! Right in the face.
That doesn't sound very happy.
What?
It doesn't sound very happy.
What? Forge is screaming today, folks. I need a longer forge. Oh, all I need is just an extra few inches.
That's what she said.
Who? Hello. Woo! That's satisfying. This is the amount of flat bar we've forged out so far. This chalk line on the floor represents how much we need to forge. Ew! Getting a sweat on. Have to make up another tool to hopefully be more efficient. Making up a kiss block for the width. That is the same width as that. Forge welding. Let's see how we're doing. So with the billet that's in the fire, we're gonna get that much material, which is still short, about 140 inches, which means we're gonna have to weld up another several billets, and I will have to go buy plenty more wrought iron. I cannot believe the amount of material we're going through on this project. This is for sure gonna be the most Damascus that I've ever made in one go. But what's crazy is that this is nothing compared to the scale of Damascus making they were doing in Belgium for the real historical Damascus barrels. Here, I'm doing the whole thing in this workshop. That doesn't seem to be how they would have done it. Again, referencing Jean Puray's article, the info that Steve Culver and many others have given me, the Damascus would have been made in big forge shops, not in the barrel maker's smithy. And if we think the billet that I'm making is big, get this. The first operation was to make the billet 120 millimeters by 120 millimeters by 500 millimeters. All right? This was Damascus making on an industrial scale. Their starting billet was a solid block, even larger than this, and that long. And so it seems like the barrel maker would have then ordered, oh, I want straight laminate material to make this Damascus barrel pattern, or I want this crazy stack up right there, and I'll buy X number of feet of it, and then the barrel would get it shipped to his workshop, where he then twists the material and welds it into the final riband before the wrapping and welding. The scale is so crazy that in 1906, 850 tons of Damascus barrels were produced in Liège. So we're dipping our toe into something that was an enormous part of history that is now largely forgotten. I read that they had 70,000 people employed in the gun-making trade in that area of Belgium. That is just crazy to me. The amount of knowledge completely lost to time. And thanks to you guys watching these videos, we get to scrape it back up and try and rediscover it. It really tickles me. I'm very happy to be doing this. Let's get this thing fluxed and welded. And would you look at that, folks? All of our 2.5 by 1/2 inch wrought iron flat material. And this is all I have left. Now, it is fortunate that the rest of all this length is not the same size as that. It's all smaller. So this is 2 inch by 1/2 inch. It gets smaller all the way to some 1/2 inch square down there. In order to make that length, this should be all we need. There's our 1/2 inch square. Oh yes! First job of the morning tomorrow is hopefully to go buy some more wrought iron. Right, it's tomorrow. I bought another hunk of it. The next size of flat bar that we need to make is 2 inch by 1/2 inch. Anytime now. We've got all the 2.5 by 1/2 we need. We've got plenty of 2 inch by 1/2 inch. Next up, 21 inches of 1.5 by 1/2, and then some 1 by 1/2. So let's cut up and weld, hopefully, our last billet of the day. Ta-da! Look at that, boys and girls. 240 inches of forged out wrought iron bar. Cost me an absolute fortune in wrought iron. You will see that everything has a nice crust of forge scale on it. We need to get through that somewhere and begin assembling our first letter. As we know very well, the letter E repeats itself the most across my two names. Our amazing calculations tell us we need at least
4 times. Why do you need calculations to know that?
You were not here. You don't know the struggle my wife and I had trying to calculate all this stuff.
Well, why do you need a calculator? You can literally just count. 1, 2, 3, 4. What's all this?
All right, there's more to it, Jamie. To account for the wastage, to account for the 4 letters, we need about 4.5 inches of E, so we'll get that all prepped. First up, we need 4 of these 2.5 by 1/2 inch pieces. Now we need 1 1.5 by 1/2. 2 1/2 by 1/2 inch wrought iron squares. Now at last, onto our second alloy, the 1040 steel. That's 10 pieces. These go like this. A few of them. Wrought iron square, wrought iron upright. 1040, 1040, 1040, wrought iron. Dang it. Ta-da! How sick is that? That's the letter E!
Is it?
I hope so.
I thought it was a W. Wait, it's an M now. It keeps changing. A 3?
Oh my goodness. Shall we try and use the laser welder to seal this box? This is going to be our first time using the laser welder on an actual project in the workshop. All right, let's send it. That is so cool. Get in. Pretty bloomin' cool. Just needs a handle, then it's into the forge. It's gonna be really important while we're forging to make sure we know what way is up, so I don't accidentally start making a bunch of M's instead of E's. So, knowing that this is up, I'm gonna do this. That's up. That is 5 kilos exactly. 5 kilos of E's going in the forge. Oh yes.
That's like 20 years in prison.
What? Before we forge that all together, special exciting news. We are approaching 3 million subscribers, which is an incredible milestone, and I'm so grateful for you all being here. So if you're interested, please go ahead and power hammer the subscribe button. I think that's what YouTubers say. I'm so grateful for all your support on this barrel making series. The feedback on our last episode was just immense. Helped give us the oomph to know that we can continue. So thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. It is such a privilege to be able to have this much fun in the workshop, and that's thanks to you guys. Also thanks to the most comfortable underwear in the world, meundies.com/forge. We appreciate them sponsoring us. In the next episode, we can get all these letters forge welded together, keep building out my name in Damascus. Bye-bye.